Hello, I'm Anne-Marie and I'm joined today by Sora Rosenblatt. Sora has been brought up in a three principles paradigm, I suppose is the best way of putting it. She works as a litigator and she's got her own YouTube channel where she posts little interviews herself, a bit like me. And she's also a rabbi's daughter. So welcome, Sora.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
That's okay. So normally when I do these, I normally ask people how their life changed before they came across the understanding and after, but obviously because you were born and brought up with it, it's going to be a bit different for you. So I'm trying to think of a way to formulate a question that might bring something out of it. So can you think of how three principles have helped you in some way, or somebody that is known to you that maybe didn't have the understanding, but through you or your family came across the understanding and it's helped them?
Yeah, sure, I can talk to that. I think that really any time anyone has a new thought about something, so if they suddenly see things differently and it's a more relaxing way of seeing it or it's a more peaceful way of seeing it, that's the principles at work. So whether you kind of call it the principles or whether you just think, oh, I'm feeling better about this, it's kind of the same thing. And I think that any time that's happened for me over my life, I think that would be an example of how it's been helpful for me. So there's lots of areas, and some things are very small. Some things are as small as me trying to open my car door and realizing I haven't unlocked the door, and that kind of like, ooh, is the kind of new thought that I'm talking about. And then there's other things where in certain relationships where I've just felt like the other person has been completely out of order in how they're doing things. And then I get humble about it and I start listening more to my soul, to mind, or to whatever people call that space in you, which isn't, it's you, but it's bigger than you. And I realized that there was other ways that I could have been dealing with that relationship and had new thought about that, and then changed it for me. So that relationship has been completely changed. So, from big to small, the new thought can be so helpful when we give ourselves the space to listen for them.
Thanks for that, Sora. Another thing I'm interested in is my own experience around the three principles, being a Catholic. And I know obviously you're a practicing Jew. I'm a not particularly good practicing Catholic. I don't go to church, but I believe in it, sort of thing, But my more stricter adhering relatives, for example, I don't know whether you saw, I did a talk with Dickon Bettinger a while back, and a member of my family sent me something they found on Reddit, which said the three principles is a cult. I wondered if you could talk to that at all.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I personally used to be very wary of how I would talk about the principles because I was worried about that exact point where, especially if people had formulated opinions about it already, it was always, I always got into insecurity about how I was going to present what I thought to them. And what's interesting is the more comfortable I get with it, the less I notice any sort of pushback from other people. And even with friends who I would say might be reluctant to hear these ideas because they don't come from a Jewish or religious source. Even with them, when you present it as a life, as something, we're all human before anything else. That's something I love to remind myself of because it puts us all on the same playing field, and we can all relate to certain things. And if people are in the mindset of wanting to learn, then they'll listen to the principles, they'll listen to what the ideas are, and they'll hear something which is useful to them. But if the people are in the mindset of, I want to argue, or I'll listen to you, but I'm going to see how this fits in with what I know already. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to leave it. Then it's very difficult to have a conversation at all. So I have experienced, I think it's interesting because I have experienced pushback on it, but it wasn't because it was because I didn't have enough understanding. And I don't know if that's the case for anyone who gets pushback on things, but I know in my own experience, back in sixth form when I was in school, when I was first, I think that was kind of the first time I was trying to share the principles with people. And I was terrible at it. I was, just quite frankly, I was doing it all wrong because I didn't understand. And my friends weren't having any of it because they saw right through it. They just thought, you don't know what you're talking about. And the truth is, I didn't. And I think the more I learned and the more I explored and got curious, and the more I became comfortable with what I was sharing, and the more I was careful to share what I know, because when you don't share what you know, I think you get into trouble. So when I became aware of that and I was careful to share only what I absolutely know, then it really didn't, even if people pushed back on it, I think I was able to come back with something else, which just moved the conversation into a good direction. And if it didn't, I knew it was time to leave it. So I think in general, the people who do think have judgments about the principles, I really do think kind of it's their loss, because there's so much in this that they could know, and I'm not here to live people's lives for them or to tell them what to believe, or it has to be real. That's the whole point of this. It has to be authentic. Otherwise it's just a show, and I'm not here to do that. So if people have their thinking about it, then it's a shame, but there's nothing really we can do except share what we know.
I know Sydney Banks said that all religions are saying the same thing, and I agree with that. Do you think sometimes in certain religious communities, or for example, I do know somebody in America who's part of the Jewish community in America, and her community gets pushback on it. She's tried to talk to them about three principles and they're just not interested. So I don't know what I'm trying to ask here, really. Don't know whether I can think of a good way of asking the question. Have you had any experience through your father, or through, obviously without naming names or anything, that would help somebody in maybe across the pond who's having problems in her area, with her community, maybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna just think about that for a minute. It's a really tough one because I haven't been in the position where I was trying to, knock through judgment. I haven't tried that before, or knock through walls that people have put up. So I wouldn't have anything to say on that. But there was something that came to mind about, were you kind of asking about the conflict that people might see between the three principles understanding and religion, or?
Yes, I think that's what it is. I think it's like I mentioned with my family member, she's trying to find that it's trying to prove to me that it's a cult, and I know it's not a cult, but it's like she's trying to prove that it's, if I start talking about the three principles, for example, she'll start sending me emails about different from I don't know, from Vatican.com or Pope.com, or you know what I'm trying to say. Anything to do with Catholic religion, she'll stop bombarding me in my inbox. So I'm using that as my own true life example, but also there's the example of somebody I spoke to in the States who had the pushback from her own Jewish community about the three principles as well. So I think that's why I'm trying to get straight in my head. Is there any ways you would suggest that could help when you get people getting that pushback, or is it just a case of just not trying to even talk to them about three principles, just letting it go?
Yeah, I would go for the latter, which is you've got to have permission with people. If you're talking to somebody, you've got to know that they're willing to really listen. And so I think being persistent and but not in a I think also this is an interesting one. It's when people do things for the right reasons, I think there's a kind of helping hand that they get from something bigger that helps put things into place for them. And whether that's being successful or whether that's realizing that there's no success to be found here, there's still that help that comes through when you really question yourself as to why you're doing what you're doing, and you always, bring it back to, when you just bring it back to what do you want to do, why do you want to be doing this, and what's a good way of doing this, and when you check in with yourself that it's all right, I think it just happens. It will happen, because I do believe that if you follow what feels right to you, not right because it gives you any sort of, not for you and your ego, or you and your like your own success and your own glory, but if you do it because it feels just that sense of this is what I should be doing now, I think it works out. And if it's not working out, I think you've got to check back in with that. I think that's really all I have to say on that one.
No, I was just interested to hear your views, and it's really good advice. And I can see for myself, really, I think when people are enthusiastic, my own experience, I mean, I've been around the understanding since about 2017 now, but when you first hear it and when you first understand it, you get really excited and you can almost become preachy because you just want to tell everybody. And I think a lot of people in the Three Ps community possibly fall into that trap a bit. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking for myself, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I feel that too. There's times when I have an insight. The first thing I think is, right, who am I going to tell? But it's interesting because the insight that I've had, and I share it with somebody, it's sometimes so obvious to the other person. And they're like, okay, very nice. I'm like, no, but this is amazing. This is profound. How do you not see that this is just life-changing? And they're a little bit like, because it's useful for me. And in sharing it, I think, because I do think there is a huge value in sharing things. But I just think it has to come from the right place, and share what you know. That's what I know about sharing. Those are the two things that I know about sharing.
I just thought I'd open it up in case Wendy or Sharon have anything that they'd like to talk to you about, Sora, or ask you.
Hi, Sora. Do you know the thought that came to my mind? With different religions, don't we all want to connect wherever we come from? And I had this vision. If you're in some disaster area, there was some earthquake, and you had a Catholic person, a Jewish person, Christian, etc., etc. Wouldn't we all come together and help people? So it's if you come with the same feeling, it's the same. That's where it's the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. So it's not about it's just it's all one thing, like Sid was saying. So we all come with the same, I think, just wanted to connect, and it's all comes from the love and understanding, whatever religion you are.
It's just humanity, I suppose. We're all human beings, and I think sometimes when it comes to religion and the differences that we share, we forget that we're just all the same, and that's what causes the conflicts and problems in the world.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it, seeing beyond what someone might be saying at that moment, if they've got a lot of thinking in their head. it depends what they're coming out with. Maybe seeing their innocence, but still seeing, just having sort of love and understanding for them yourself still, no matter what they come out with. Yeah, because between all that, there'll be beautiful stuff, won't there, from everybody, no matter what, you know, what thinking's going on, what turmoil they're in.
And oh, sorry, Sharon, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, first, I find it fascinating that Zora grew up in this understanding. That's unbelievable to me. The other thing, this is the first time I've heard about the cult reference. And now it because of the reaction I've had from when I first came upon the understanding, I gave some information to a friend, but I actually didn't read, and my boyfriend gets all of that. But and I noticed she distanced herself from me. And then I have a friend that she's on Facebook, and I think she sees all my interactions with the 3P community. And because I've never talked to her about it, but when I referenced something about a webinar, she kind of she skipped past real quick. Like she's worried that I'm going to try to talk to her about it. And I just never understood that people thought it was a cult, because boy, we're having a good old time if it's and I'm very conscious of, you know, watching kind of things like that. And I never thought that about the 3P. Everyone's too happy in it. So if it's a cult, it's a pretty good way. Anyway, yeah, great conversation. I'm just like, yeah, thank you.
So Zora, I don't know whether anybody's ever said anything to you about it being a cult, but if somebody was to say, oh, it's a cult, how would you respond?
I think I might just laugh to start off with. I might just, you know, just crack up a little bit. And then see, I don't think that you can, such an individual thing, the 3 principles. It's such a something that people bring to their own lives as an individual, and they it's just awareness of what's happening, and it's self-awareness. It's not a telling you what's happening for you, it's listening inside to what's happening for me. So I don't know the definition of the word cult or you know, any sort of histories about it. I mean, I know what the term, you know, it means like a group of people who are just quite confused and think that they are very in fact, I would, my impressions of the cult are a group of people who are very unself-aware and very unaware of the world around them. And I think that's a complete opposite with this, because for me at least, the principles have given me a huge awareness of myself and a huge awareness of what's going on for other people. And so I mean, I wouldn't try and argue with somebody about it, but it's just not how I see it. It's just not what it's been for me. I don't, you know, I always think things through for myself. I don't just, if someone says something, and this is something quite big in the 3 principles community, is they kind of like, don't take my word for it. Don't just believe me. Go and see for yourself if it's true. And, you know, sometimes someone has said something and it hasn't been true for me. Or sometimes, you know, they've said something and it's just triggered something in me that helped me see what it was, but it wasn't exactly that way, because everyone is an individual. And I do think there is individuality. So it's not how it's played out for me, and certainly not, you know, how I see it. And I think for those reasons, I don't think there's any merit to that claim, really. Yeah.
And as a young person, I like to think I'm a young person, but I'm not. I still think I'm 25, unfortunately. Is there any sort of communities within the three principles that would be where I know you've got your Instagram series and your YouTube series. Is that tailored to young people, or is it for everybody?
I think a little bit, not consciously, but because the things I come up against are usually what people my age would come up against. It sometimes does speak to that. And you know, my age group might just hear things more in that just because of where I'm at. But as well, I do think that on some issues, I've been really fortunate to have got a more mature outlook on certain things. So I think it is really tailored to anyone. And I'm not actually I don't know about a specifically young community for the three principles, but I know a few young, who do I know that's, I'm part of a group that talks about mind, and originally, I don't know if you know Mara Gleason. She was very involved in the Three Principles community, and now she talks about just an understanding about mind a lot. And I'm on her program. There are a few young people on that, but otherwise I don't know of a specific community.
Do you want to give your Instagram and YouTube channel a plug, so if people want to catch up to see where?
Yeah, absolutely. They're both called Meaningful Conversations. So on YouTube, I'm just going to check if there's an underscore in it. On YouTube it's just Meaningful Space Conversations with an S at the end. And on Instagram, it is meaningful_conversation without an S at the end. That's because I think with an S was taken already, so I didn't put the S on the end.
I was just writing that down so that I can put it when I put the YouTube, this onto YouTube. So I'll put that as part into the description as well, so people can get to you easily.
Thank you. Thanks. That's so kind.
Is there anything else anybody would like to ask Sora, Wendy or Sharon?
Well, Sora, I work in a school. I work with young adults. Have you ever spoken to youth groups or young adults in schools? Or I'm guessing your YouTube channel is certainly useful for that. So I will check that out, because I work with some struggling adults. So just pointing them to things with someone their own age may be helpful. But have you ever gone into schools or shared with colleges, universities?
What's coming to mind for me is with young people. I've heard other people talk a lot about working with young people. I don't have extensive experience, but what comes out for me is a trust and non-judgmental element of it, where a lot of young people are pushed in a lot of directions. They're being molded from all areas, and sometimes they just need a freedom to be who they are, and for someone to realize that they're absolutely fine, that they're just, even if they're messing around a little bit or they're being a teenager, there's a trust there that they're fine or they're gonna be okay. And an element and just a completely non-judgmental space for them to be in. I think that's something that people would be so grateful for as a young person, especially in school and when there's a lot of pressure. Just want a breathing space where you just know that the person that you're with has your best interests at heart. And what's really nice with working with young people that I see is that they call it I don't remember who in the Three Principles community, I think it might be Bill Pettit, but he says that they've got a great like, I don't actually want to say this word because it's not a nice word, but basically like a rubbish barometer, where like they can see when something's rubbish. Like they are so sensitive to that, that they're sometimes the greatest teachers, because they will tell you how it is when you say something which you're not, when you're not sharing your truth, they'll pick up on it and they'll teach you. And I think going in from that space and respecting their wisdom, and coming in from that, that's how I'd try and approach all people, to be quite fair, but especially young people, when it's, I don't know the answers, I'm just here to see if I can be of service to you and helping you find your answers that are really coming from you. So I think that would be, that's the stuff I've heard and the stuff that I try and keep in mind when I'm talking with people. I don't know if that prompted any more questions or if that was helpful, Wendy.
That was beautiful. Yeah, I would say when I work, I'm told I work differently. I talk with them, I listen with them. You know, it's not me, and it's not. I'm not a teaching assistant, and they're, this student. I'm on this same comfortable level with no judgment, and I think that's where we do it, don't we? You know, it's just comfortable, trusting, and kind. And you're right, they do read into anything if you just try and put it on. They can see right through that, and that just creates more distrust, doesn't it? Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Sure. I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, I keep doing that. I should learn my lesson by now. I've been doing it since January. Yeah, no, I was just asking Sharon if she had anything to ask as well. Unless you've got anything else to add, Sora, I can't think of anything else to ask you, but I think it's been a really nice conversation.
Yeah, it's been so nice to be here with all of you, and nothing specific is coming to mind.
No. I'm happy to call it there then, if no one else has got anything else, because I think it's lovely seeing you, Sora, and thanks for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Sora. It's been beautiful. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.